Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with the steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed.
A lot got woken up in me around then. And I have writing to prove it. So one of the ways I began to cope with being away from my family in Georgia, because at that time I still felt like home was Georgia. I wrote my grandparents. I wrote my aunts and uncles. And my grandfather kept my writings. I didn't know he kept them all. I knew he kept some things, but he had a whole file cabinet. And when he passed, my Aunt Melinda did something so amazing. She has no idea just how much this means to me. She sent me his files on me. And so I got all these letters that I wrote back. And in some of these things, I got things that he had written to me as well. Because my grandfather would sometimes make duplicates. But I think some of the correspondence, my parents may have shared back with him too, when we moved so that it wouldn't get lost, because we moved a couple of times. So however it came to be, these articles were in his possession. And this is something that he wrote me on August 26, 1991. And I want to read it to you guys. Hello, Marta. He called me by my Christian name, not my nickname, because I was 11. I was becoming a woman. We were so glad to get your letter today and to know that all of you are doing well. Grandmother and I are still thinking about the fine time we had this summer at your home. We thank you again for allowing us to use your room. Because when your elders come to visit you, you don't put them on a sofa or a blow up. You give them a good bed and you go and get on the floor or on the sofa, in case you were wondering. I'm so glad you like the reel. My granddad went and bought me a fishing reel and rod. And I do hope you'll get to catch a fish before the season is over. You will need to get your father to turn the handle around, as I had to turn it in to fit it in the box. Please remember to be very careful when you go fishing. Always stay near an adult at all times whenever you are around water. Yes, it's time for school again. It rained so hard here that just a few children went to school the first day of school. Since returning home, I went fishing twice. Most of the time, since coming back home, I worked in the yard. My grandfather, by the time he passed, had converted his whole backyard into a garden. All the corn stalks have been cut down and turned under, and I used to work in that garden with him when I would visit. We too are looking forward to Christmas, when we hope to see all of you. Please say hello to the rest of your family, and I promise to answer all letters received. Take care and God bless. Granddad. P.S. The $1 is for stamps whenever you wish to write again. I'm so glad I have that still. And yes, I'm putting it back so I don't lose it. Written in his own hand. I have some amazing, amazing roots. My grandfather knew that I was a little different. He didn't talk to me like I was a baby. He talked to me like I had a brain, and I needed that. This girl needed that. with what she was dealing with. Yeah, I had a Jerry curl. I didn't know that's what they were giving me at the time. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Sixth grade. So around 92-ish. Lots of change in the world. And I was getting to a place where I was noticing it more, a whole lot more. And things were bothering me a whole lot more. And I was trying to figure out what to do with that. I wanted to do something. And it makes sense because I was getting ready to head to junior high, or middle school, as some people would call it. That was the year I studied Spanish, French, German, then Spanish. And sixth grade marked the time that by that time I joined band. I was old enough that I could leave elementary school at the end of the day twice a week. I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays, and go over to the junior high so that I could be in the community band, or the district band, for my side. And I met other kids from Kirkwood, and there were probably some homeschool kids in there too, now that I think about it. Never really thought about it that much then. And it was funny because our elementary and our junior high school weren't that physically distant from each other. But we were stranger danger era kids, so we would always make sure we grouped up. And we had like these different flights that would leave. So those who got out at a certain time, they would start with their little group. But we had a thing where we didn't leave anybody behind. So remember I told you there weren't very many Black people. So my posse was white people who were looking out for me. That may factor in a little bit as we get into my story a little bit deeper. I had a dear friend, Jackie, back in those days, and we stayed in touch kind of far into high school, even after I ended up leaving Iowa and moving to Arkansas, which we'll get to shortly. Jackie was a sweet girl. She was a really sweet girl. And it helped to have somebody who, it didn't feel like they were looking at me as a Black person. They were just seeing me as another kid. But we were both in the band, and we more often than not walked together when it came time to go to band over at Northwest Junior High. And I still have several letters from her from those days. Yeah, we were old school. We wrote on the notebook paper. It's before people had word processors and whatnot. Yeah. Jackie Hearn. A good friend. Seventh grade, Northwest Junior High School. Even though I've been going to band over there, I was trying like hell to get my family to let me transfer to the other side of town. And I was really wanting to be around some more Black people at that time. It was starting to bother me that I wasn't spending any time with Black people. There were a couple of Black kids who were at Central, and then later at Northwest, but I never really felt like I belonged to that crew because it was because I wasn't raised with them. I came in at the age of 8, and the couple who were there were either family with each other by marriage or by blood, or they had just been familiar with each other, or they were already clicked up. And there really was no room for me in that one. So they were kids, and I don't fault them now for how I felt on the outside of that, but I know I felt very on the outside of that. My brother didn't have the difficulty that I had And part of that, I think, is probably because he was younger than me. Not by a lot, but a little bit. And he didn't come with some of the hangups I came up with. And I'm grateful that he didn't have those. I'm glad that his nickname was the Mayor of Coralville, as a matter of fact, when we were younger, because he didn't know a stranger and he got along with a lot of people. And I'm sure he had his struggles too, but his were slightly different than mine. But by the time I hit junior high, I didn't really expect to date. Those of you who know my father. But I didn't expect to date because I didn't think that boys saw me that way. I was a good, reliable teammate. I was a queen at kickball. I was naturally aggressive and competitive when it came to just about everything. So I don't think anyone could have ever accused me of being prissy. So I was reliable. I would find a place to belong, where I could be plugged into a team. I liked team things where your belonging there was tied to your skill and your commitment to practicing. I liked those things. I didn't like subjective inclusionism. So those are themes that stayed with me. But again, digressing. I just kind of wanted to be around Black people some more. And I didn't see that as being what I was going to have at Northwest Junior High, as much as I could have at Southeast Junior High. Well, I lost that one. I lost that fight. My parents, I don't know if it was that they decided I didn't need to switch schools in the district, or if there were impediments put on by the district for me not going over there. But I attended Northwest Junior High School for 2 years, 7th grade and 8th grade. And Adrian moved part of the way through there. So when she came back is when I was trying to think of how to get to the other side of town, now that I think about it, because she's probably going to correct me on that one too. We did have each other for 1 year, and then we didn't. And then she moved back to Iowa City. And as she was moving back, that's when my family moved away. But Adrian, I still have letters, and you're probably going to want to see these when you come to see me. This one typed, this one written in your own hand, with all of the things that we used to say to each other back then, which I will not say out here. Yeah, I'm a pack rat. And I'm glad in this moment, because this helps me to be able to look back and see things as they were, not as just how I remember. And it's the funny thing about memory. As you get older, you can remember things differently than they actually happen. And it's nice to have something to look back on and say, wait, no, that's not quite right. Northwest Junior High, Trojan years. I would not call those happy years for me. But then again, is junior high happy for anybody? It's a weird, awkward time. You're trying to figure yourself out. You're trying to figure other people out. You're trying to get your grades so you don't mess up things as your GPA is going to start mattering soon. So you're trying to do all the things, and the social awkwardness and all that stuff kind of just starts compounding and bugging you, and your personality starts showing, and you're just trying to figure it all out. But there are a couple things that I remember that marked that time. I remember showing up for one of my private music lessons, and just feeling the stress of feeling always on, like I couldn't relax and be fully myself, feeling very filtered, feeling very masked in the space.